Hi, everyone. I was just talking to Trish, so I think she should be on any second. Shoot her a text. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, hello. Glad to see you guys tonight or today. Should we give everyone a couple more minutes to join in and then we'll get started? I actually must admit I went to a Zoom meeting that had already concluded because I have so many Zoom meetings on my calendar. It's hard to tell them apart. So not sure if you're having similar problems. All right. EP, has everyone got the email of what I sent to you, or do you need to get people's emails texted to you on the chat?
I am about to forward it, but I don't have, let's say I don't have a few emails. So is it Juliana or Juliana? If you could chat me your email and I'll send you a document that Trish created for tonight. And then
Juliana, I already did it. It's in the chat. I just saw it.
Oh, perfect.
That was like the fastest I've ever seen.
Attilia, sorry if I'm saying that wrong. I don't have yours either. So if you could chat that to me, and I have Zach's, and then everyone else I think I have. So I will get that forwarded out right now.
Okay, and then the other thing I could do is screen share, but when I tried it just now, it said host disabled. So if you want to make me host or co-host, if you have that power, that awesome power. And then we'll do some introductions and we'll get into it. I'm just gonna get up and close my door.
Trish, I just made you a co-host, so you should be able to share.
Thank you. Great.
Okay, it won't let me copy from the chat. Is that weird? Am I doing something wrong?
Oh, it might not have that possibility. It might be one of those Control X
security things. I'll just type it. Okay, so you all should be getting an email in approximately 1 minute.
Great, thank you. And yes, well done. Thank you. I can share now. So I'm going to work on getting that set up. And then I'll be sharing what we're sending. So if you don't feel like opening your email, you can just follow along on the screen. And if you are on the phone, I'll try to read out what we're talking about also, in case. We'll just try to handle all the technological stuff, because we're talking about authenticity today. And so part of authenticity is making yourself vulnerable, being willing to make mistakes, being willing to own up to what you don't know. And a lot of us right now, we didn't plan this topic for this particular pandemic, but a lot of us are definitely dealing with overwhelming responsibilities at this point in time. We talked about navigating the unknown last month, and for some of you who didn't join us, that one is recorded, and EP can send it out if you'd like to hear what we talked about. And then there's also just such a lot of rich information all over the internet right now about navigating uncertainty, leading through disruptive times, checking in with yourself. So one of the things I wanted to do tonight is do a little bit of an introduction. Some of us know each other, some of us don't. We love to welcome new faces, new friends. The Goff Strategic Leadership Center supports this event, and we'll keep going virtually until we can go in person again. And if we don't mind, what I want to do is just take a minute, introduce yourself. If you'd like to share not just like where you're from or who you are, but what kind of leader you are. Some of the things we're going to talk about tonight are self-awareness, and you could say something about how you think you come across to others. I've been told I'm intimidating and cold. I've been working on that one. And I was also the best, here, how about this? Why don't we introduce ourselves and say the best compliment you ever got? Because then you're not bragging, because it ain't bragging if it's true. So the best compliment you ever got, or the most leadershipy compliment you ever got. And I'll tell you mine. Mine was that someone told me once that I reek of competence. And I thought that was fantastic. I mean, reeking is not fantastic, but reeking of competence. If you're going to reek of anything, let's reek of competence, right? So, so let's go ahead and let me see. Erin, do you mind starting us off? What's the best compliment you've ever paid?
I would love to. So for those of you
and a little of who you are for people, because
yeah.
Erin is one of the stalwarts of our center.
So I'm the Goff Strategic Leadership Center today. My name is. I'm the new admin for the center, so I'm working with EP and Trish to help host all of these events and to move things forward in the center. And I just got my degree from the University of Utah in strategic communications. So I love strategy. So this is a great place for me to land in right after graduation. I don't know. I can't think of a specific compliment I've ever received, but people usually tell me that I'm happy. I'm a happy leader, and so it's easy to listen to what I'm saying just because I want the best for everybody, and that's a genuine feeling that I have. So that's usually something I get.
That's wonderful. That piece of genuineness and also the positive attitude. Fantastic.
Okay.
So Erin, why don't you pick on someone else who's in our group? We have 12 participants right now. So you can pick anybody except me.
I'm going to pick on Juliana.
Hi, can you hear me okay? Great. Hello. Good evening. My name is Juliana Espinosa, and I'm actually here quite randomly. A colleague of mine at the University of Utah forwarded me this link and said, you should definitely check this out. I used to work at the University of Utah. I now currently work at Western Michigan University, and I'm a graduate student in the Organizational Change Leadership Program. So this is totally right up my alley, and was really excited to be here, but did not realize that I would have to speak, so my apologies for not preparing something in advance. But I'm actually an academic librarian at Western Michigan University, and I think a lot about certain industries or job positions that have a lot of change-averse mindset to it, and some of that is academic librarianship, actually, which I think is really fascinating. The best compliment I've ever received, gosh, I've done my Strengths Finder, and my #1 top talent is strategic, and I've had folks tell me like your brain is just wired really differently. So I guess it's a compliment. But thank
I
you
would
so much.
take that as a great compliment, Juliana. We are so happy to have you here. So who do you want to pick on next?
Yes, I think let's go with the random wood stick, please.
Hello, that's me, Kevin Wood. I'm a graduate of the program, the PMBA program at the U, an accountant.
Are you in your basement right now, Kev? Can I just ask you?
Yes, yeah, basement.
I just said that's probably
this is
not
my
a
office.
Zoom. That's probably not a Zoom filter thing that that you put behind you. But
No, this is the man cave, as I call it,
cool.
cave-like. Anyway, probably the best compliment I can think of is I was told that I am, what was it? How do they something along the lines of very transparent. They never have to know exactly what I'm thinking, which I thought was odd, but.
Well, in terms of today's topic, that is primo. So
yeah,
wonderful transparency. All right, who do you want to call on?
Let's do Steven Erickson.
Hey everyone. So I recently graduated with Kevin and with EP. So I get called intense a lot, and I didn't think that I was, but now I kind of take it as a compliment because somebody has to be intense.
Okay, intense can go either way. So I think knowing
I'm
you, I think that's a real
I take it as a compliment. I don't know if they mean it as one, but I'll take it.
All right, fair enough. And a lot of what we're going to talk about tonight is how you self-monitor and self-awareness. So this compliment thing is going to link to our discussion topic. Who do you want to call on, Steve?
Let's go with Anastasia.
Maybe she's away for a minute. Oh, here she comes.
Hi everyone, can you hear me? Yes, I think you can. Good evening everyone. So I would think that the best compliment as of right now what I received is from my current manager who hired me a year and a half ago for the position which I really wanted when I switched my career and I got into product management. And he told me that he really admired my resilience, and he mentioned it a couple of times that I am quite resilient, and I would agree with him. Seeing myself moving from Russia 10 years ago and moving in the direction I want to move.
Nice. Excellent. Resilience definitely describes you. Who do you want to call on?
I would call on my friend Ottilia.
All right, Ottilia. Can you unmute Ottilia and introduce yourself? Thank you.
Hi, this is Ottilia. I don't know if you can hear me.
We can hear you, yes.
I'm just kind of crashing your seminar. Anastasia invited me. And I wasn't completely following because I usually try to work and do other things.
Oh, that's okay. You can just say pass. We're just asking, we want to gather up what the best compliment is you ever heard. And some of them so far are being transparent, being intense, being resilient, being genuine. And so we're just curious if you have anything that people often say about you.
Well, people usually say about me that I have high standards, and I think, I'm not sure if that's a compliment, but I take it as such, just like the person, the second person before Anastasia, but that would be my answer.
That's a good answer. And that idea of whether or not it's good or bad, it's contextual, and we'll get into that. Thank you so much. You're very welcome here, Attilia. Do you want to call on someone or you want me to?
Please call on someone.
Okay, I'm gonna pick on Gina Young. Hi,
Good
Gina.
evening, everyone. Can you give me the thumbs up if you hear me? I'm not camera ready, so I'm not showing my face. And I actually am in my kitchen cooking dinner at the same time. So I'm happy to be here. I'm actually a graduate from the EMBA program class of 2010. So it's been 10 years since I've been in any kind of learning environment, but I love the continuing ed. I love this kind of environment, really thrive, love listening to everybody's examples and what you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So Juliana, like you, my number one strength finder is strategic. I also am woo and ideation. I think one of the best compliments that has been given to me is by my coworkers, which is I always seem to be able to communicate what other people feel or what they want to get across. So I'm frequently called on to express those opinions.
That is a rare skill. That's fantastic. It's almost like you're the empath of the group. So very nice. Really nice. So glad you're here, Gina. We are definitely trying to build out this SLAM event. Started out with strategic leadership alums who finished their class and didn't want to stop learning. And so we have these meetups, and please keep coming and tell other people.
I love that. Thank you.
Do you want to call on someone else, or do you want me to?
I see Z Peterson at the bottom. I don't believe has had a chance.
Okay.
Hey everybody, my name is Zach Peterson. I graduated from Weber State back in 2006. I'm a senior international account manager for a pension fund out in New York City, get to telecommute and work from home. Recently, I guess I've taken a couple of the executive education courses, the first one by Trish last fall, and I've just been enjoying, I've been enjoying these meetups, so thanks again for the invitation. I guess the best compliment I got was from my boss and from my boss's boss when they both told me that they could see me in their position in the future. So I guess that's one of the reasons why I'm taking these courses, is to kind of, as part of the succession plan, to eventually move up to be an executive leader.
That's wonderful. So I'm going to write down high leadership potential. Nice, Zach. Thank you so much. Do you want to call on someone else?
Yeah, I don't know that we've heard from Toma Facro.
Toma, welcome. There you go.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So we're just talking about like the best compliment we've ever received.
Yes, and Tom is another one of our successful students. So yes, what's the best compliment you've ever received, even if it was maybe controversial, whether it was good or bad?
I don't know. I'd have to think about it, but the one that does come to mind, I don't know, it just came from my friend. Are we talking professional or just in general?
Well, I left it open-ended on purpose because the best compliment could have been from a family member or someone in your community, but it's up to you.
Well, I don't know. The very first one that came to mind, like when I heard the question, was actually from my friend who said that I have that kind of like gift of sort of like enjoying the little things in life, like I don't know, little I don't know, like Christmas lights here, or like birds there, like just little things, you know, that get me excited sometimes.
That's good. That's a rare gift also. Thanks, Toma. I'm really glad you're here. So I think we just need to still hear from Jennifer and Mira. Oh, and we have some new additions too. Who do you want to call on, Toma?
Mira.
Hi, Toma. Hi. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Mira.
I don't have a permission to, oh, I just installed this. Okay, now I have a permission to actually share my face here, trying to stay authentic. Oh, hi, Vlad. Say hi to everyone.
Hello.
Just recently, one of the compliments, I took it as a compliment. One of my coworkers, she said that I will act and I do things as I know what I'm doing, but often I self-doubt a lot and I don't know what I'm actually doing. But the comment that she made saying that I like she's looking up to me and she's saying like, you look like you know what are you doing, kind of like, oh, I've been working hard on it, like actually just to come across as person self-aware and sort of speak like being can you, I don't know, can you guys hear me? I just got
Yes,
some
we can hear
pop-up.
you really well. No,
Okay, yeah.
this idea,
So
it's,
yeah. So yeah, she said that I act like she can tell that I'm acting like I know what I'm doing, but I often self-doubt. Like I have this inner like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, but she's saying like, wow, you actually being really, really like on it. You look like you on top of things, but like inner, like, you know, like always have this like kind of, I have to work hard on it inside. So
well, and this is a great topic for tonight, Mira, because the idea of should you show your vulnerable side, because we're going to talk about authenticity and strategic leadership. Should you show your fear, your self-doubt, your concerns, or should you hide those because you're doing more service to your community, to your team, to your organization, if you project that strength, even if you don't feel it inside? And this is really vital, because as your friend is saying, it's comforting to others. It's a skill many people would love to have, your skill, to be able to, in spite of the self-doubt, project confidence. But
yeah.
Others would say with authenticity, maybe you should show the vulnerability. So
right, but at the same time, that's always like hard work for me to be like, to show that like I'm like I know what I'm doing. Yeah, so that was really like, oh, my hard work on myself is kind of paying off.
Yeah, no, you're achieving it. And I think, again, it will be contextual, but that'll be a great topic for us to dive into more. Thank you so much. So Jennifer, would you introduce yourself and tell us the best compliment you've ever received?
Okay. Too many buttons today. My name is Jennifer Kyle. I work at OC Tanner. I manage a team there in our sales operations, and learned about these sessions through our HR leadership. So taking advantage of the time to do any virtual trainings I can do right now. But compliment that I recently received in my team was they felt that I create a safety for them to make mistakes, to be unsure, to not know an answer, that they feel safe in admitting that.
That's fantastic. And that is one of the pillars of authentic leadership, as we'll talk about soon. Thank you so much for joining us here, Jennifer. Really glad to have you here. It looks like Zach Mo is a new person, but that's Zach on a different phone. So I think Majo, if you want to reveal yourself. I think that's not.
Hi, Trish. This is Maria. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. It's not the best connection, but go ahead.
Can you hear me well? Okay. Sorry, shopping, but I didn't want to miss the call.
That's okay.
This is Maria Lara. We had a class together, the Ghana class. Yes, good to see you. I'll be connecting with the video in a minute, but the question was best compliment that I've ever received.
Yes.
I would say I have two good compliments. One of them is that I'm a good listener, that whenever I meet anyone, I make them feel like I've known them their whole life, because I am able to listen to them and really connect with them quickly because of it. And the other one that I thought it was really interesting, and just like one of the last people mentioned, that that insecurity inside of yourself, right? That you're thinking, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm gonna do it anyway, and I'm gonna, make it and fake it until you make it, kind of thing. And as I've been, in my professional life, usually there was this specific person that said that they felt like I knew it all. Like, and even if I didn't know it, that I was strong enough to rise above the whatever problem we had. So I thought that was really interesting because I think what I'm trying to do that, and I'm trying to portray myself in that sense, that I'm confident and competitive enough to do the job, or whatever task it is. So I thought that was a good compliment, and it felt good to listen to it.
That's pretty great. Well, you had me at the first one, Maria, because when I met you, you definitely made me feel like I had known you a long while in the first 10 minutes. So that's that's very legit. So we've left out EP though, I realized. EP, what do you have? EP runs the whole center, and I don't want to put her on the spot, but I will anyway.
I don't know if this is the best compliment, but because one of our principles at the center is self-awareness and truly understanding yourself and obtaining feedback, before continuing to grow in your professional career. In college, the thing that strikes me the most, or is the most memorable for this question, is that in college, someone in one of the small groups that I was a part of randomly said, "You're so motivated." And I kind of like looked at her and was like, what does that even mean? Like, I just do things because I like doing things and being involved and blah, blah, blah. That was like I remember it was kind of like a stake in the ground moment for me, that she called me out for something that I didn't realize I was, was actually a part of my daily life or whatever. And I think that helped kind of push me in a different direction and be able to continue to grow. So I consider that a compliment.
Very good. Well, and I appreciate all of you being so forthcoming with, and did we get everybody? Tell me if I forgot anybody. I hate to do that, but having to actually talk about what's great about yourself is something that many people are not encouraged to do. And then other people are sort of, oh, I can give you 20 compliments. I can give you my whole sheet of how wonderful I am. So what we want to talk about today is, and I think your different traits that you shared here will give us a great opportunity to explore. But I'm going to pull up the authenticity document that I shared around earlier, or the EP shared around, to be honest. And then we're going to talk about, I just want to do a little teeing up. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm a professor by training. So you're going to hear a little bit of lecturing for a moment, but I hope to keep it brief. And then we're going to switch back to some prompts and some sharing. So, but I want us all to level set on what we think that authenticity means. And then many of you who've already done strategic leadership with us already are very well aware of what strategic leadership means. But strategic leadership and authentic leadership have a lot in common, but they're not the same thing. And what I want to dig into today and help us see is how they're different, how they're the same. But also an important thing could be for in terms of application is how we can use both of these, strategic leadership and authentic leadership, to help in the world that we're in right now. So I am trying very hard to share my screen, and it's not really letting me get where I want to go. So can you see a Word document yet? Yes? Okay. All right, I'm scrolling up to the top. This is what we just sent out. I'm going to close my little chat screen. And so this is SLAM, April 21st, the year of the COVID. Is that how you're talking about time these days? Probably not. The 4 pillars of authentic leadership theory, and this is where it gets a little lectury, but it should be also quite intuitive to many of us, is self-awareness, knowing what you stand for and monitoring yourself. Okay, so the self is one pillar. The idea of what's called in academia balanced processing, which at least one of you already said, you create a safe space for people to be able to fail and take risk. That is this idea of having a safe space, open sharing, not So the idea of balance processing is you're not skewing it towards we all have to be great or we all have to be anyway. There's a balance of bringing our authentic selves and where we are right now, meeting the person where they are. The third pillar is relational transparency. This is about honesty and clear expectations. And I got to tell you, I couldn't have made this more perfect for the kind of compliments that some of you shared about being genuine, being honest, being transparent. There was a lot of that coming through in this group. Then the fourth pillar is what we call an internalized moral perspective. This means that you don't watch to say, what's everyone else doing? You know, oh, they're stealing a car. Should I go steal the car? It looks like everyone's stealing cars now. No, it's having your internal moral perspective. Do the right thing. And I just spent a lot of time last week working on a case about Wells Fargo during the time when they were cross-selling and creating accounts for people without their consent. And at that time, a lot of the people who were doing this cross-selling and opening these accounts were saying, it's the industry standard. It's what everyone else is doing. We have to do it to be competitive. There was actually a metric of how many products per household. And the metric kept rising from 3 per household to 4 per household to 5 to 6. And they were shooting for, I think, 8. 8 was the target. And if you think about it, 8 accounts with a bank in your household is a lot. And if that's the average, but the idea was that they had externalized this moral perspective and said, we know what we're doing is wrong, but everyone else is doing it. So that's the opposite of authentic leadership. So those 4 pillars, and there is a paper beyond here, and I may get into some of it or we may not need to, but you all have it now. The 6 principles of strategic leadership, which is what our center does and what we focus on in the work that EP and Aaron and I and others do, is our self-awareness, which is the same. And then we focus on personal agility and continuing to grow, which, you know, I'm going to ask you what you think of how these things might connect on. Supporting and enabling others, navigating the unknown. And then there's a big piece in strategic leadership about pursuing value and communicating vision. So those last 2 are very much around the strategic piece of leadership and creating value, successfully competing with others, making trade-offs, that kind of thing. So on the one hand, one argument could be these only have that one thing, self-awareness, in common, but we might find more things in common, or we might find more ways where these 2 kinds of leadership reinforce each other, or not. And that's really what I'd like to explore. So I've come with a few prompts. One, asking you to think about how authenticity might enhance your own strategic leadership. Then I thought it might be fun to flip it and think, can someone who is inauthentic, someone who is manipulative and not transparent and has an external moral compass, can they be an effective strategic leader? And then if we have time, we can get into how you can self-monitor to reach the level of authenticity you want to be at. Okay, so if I'd like to be more vulnerable, or I'd like to be more balanced, how can I get there? And then finally, if we have time, I'd like to share some examples of, as we always do, of leaders who are or are not authentic, because that's going to help us unpack some of this. Okay, so there's the theoretical side of what is authentic leadership theory, what is strategic leadership. But if you would, I want to jump into, how do you think authenticity enhances your ability to create value as a strategic leader and to navigate uncertainty and to take ownership? And I'll welcome anybody who wants to jump in.
It's Gina. I'll start.
Thank you.
I think the one thing about authenticity is, at least with my team, so I have a team, is that I think it builds trust. So whenever you have a strategy or strategic and you're leading a team without that authenticity to be able to build on that trust, it's really hard to get buy-in from your team. So when they know and they believe that you are who you are and they trust you, they're going to believe your strategic direction that you're laying down.
Okay, would you thank you first of all for volunteering first, Gina, but would you be comfortable to share an example of something you've done or you've seen people do where that idea of authenticity has helped to get buy-in for maybe a change program or a new product or something else?
I've seen both, to be honest, and I think I'm right now. I have a my direct manager is being removed from her position, and I think part of it was because she was very inauthentic. Never really showed her true self or shared, and I think that there was never a level of trust. And so as we went through, a few years with her as I never really called her a leader. Actually, I called her my manager because I didn't feel like she was leading strategically, because we never really felt we could trust that. And when she would bring ideas forward, I think there was always a little bit of skepticism. Was if even in her knowledge base, did she really understand? Could we, go forward with this, or should we question it?
Very, very, and often that counterexample really makes the point of what we're looking for, right? We know it when we don't see it.
Yeah.
So, very cool. So who else wants to chime in? I mean, and you don't have to name names, and you can, this is a safe space for us all to share.
I was thinking earlier in my career, I had some leaders, and I think that being authentic allows the employees and everyone else to know what's expected. And so then you can do, the manager, the leader, whatever, can trust that the employee will do what they're going to do, and they can know how it's going to be taken as they're doing that, from my experience.
No, and that's really interesting. So not only just knowing what's expected, but knowing what will happen. It's what we call in behavioral modeling, we just call it the expectation map you have. If I do this, then this will happen. So if I try my best, but I still fail, what is the then statement that follows? Then I'll get fired. Then I'll get promoted. In the article below, I don't know if any of you had time to read it yet, but there's an interesting example, which is what happened at an automotive company. I'm going to pull down to it because I think it is interesting. So this is Alan Mulally began working at Ford. Okay, and this is a famous story. So if you've already heard it, just bear with me for a minute. But Mulally shows up and he makes these color-coded charts, and you're supposed to color it in green if your project's doing great and everything's on time, on budget, going great. You're supposed to color it in yellow if there might be a few issues, but things are mostly okay. And you're supposed to color it red if it's like crisis, we really need help, we need backup, Houston, we have a problem. So at the time, Ford was forecast to lose $17 billion. Okay, that's not a trivial amount, even ever. And especially, this was not yesterday, this is a while back. But every chart was green. Okay, so how are you losing this much money and everybody's project is rocking along? Okay, so there is some issue here. And so people were afraid to say that, out of fear for job safety, they were afraid to say they weren't green, go, everything's great. So one leader, Mark Fields, who has gone on to have a very, very successful career since then, had a chart with red on it. And Mulally reacts by clapping, by saying, "Thank you, we're thrilled. Now we have a problem to solve. This is fantastic." And I actually know one person who was in the room for this and who knows Mark. And Mark didn't really know if he was kidding, but it became clear that he really meant it. Like, thank you. I don't want to see the stuff you guys can handle. I want to see the stuff you can't handle. That's why we need a team. That's why we're all here together. And the following week, you saw charts that varied from green to yellow to red. So people started to say, oh, actually, we can tell this person the truth. He's a leader who's going to help us solve problems. He's not going to punish us. So this is really on point to your comment of not just knowing what's expected, but knowing the consequences. So, all right. So, is authenticity so obvious and easy that we can just say, oh, we use trust, we know what's expected, we set the tone, we get buy-in? Is it hard to do this? Is it easy? Is it easier not to do it? Let's hear from some more people.
I'll share. To go on your last question, I think it's harder to be an authentic strategic leader when you've never had an authentic leader. And so if you've only ever had leaders that are pretty cut and dry or demanding or whatever it looks like for you, then you don't know how to lead authentically. But for us that have had those authentic leaders, that makes all the difference. So like what we do affects the people below us as well, like in the long run.
That and I don't want to ask you to share more than you're comfortable with, but that is the, what I want to ask you is the converse, is that the right thing? Is the other side true, that it is easier to be an authentic leader if you've seen it modeled?
I believe so. I feel like the organizations I'm the most comfortable in have all, and the ones I'm most authentic, my authentic self are the ones where you can tell everyone's encouraged to be themselves. So I would say it's the same either way.
Okay. But what if you encourage people to be themselves and you don't like what you get? Like bring your whole self to work and then suddenly you have this group at work that isn't acting the way you expected. As a lead, now put yourself in the leader's position. And I don't mean to just pick on you, Erin, but anybody respond.
I personally think that's when politics come into play, and like everyone might have a different directive or the same directive but different intentions. And if you bring your whole self to work, but you have a different desired outcome, I guess, then you can't really be as transparent and authentic as you intend to be, because you know it's not going to get you where you want to go.
Okay. Those are really good. That's a really good way to separate. So your directive, which means your objective, your ability to think, I want to create value here, and your intention, which might be to not hurt people's feelings, to honor their whole selves. But politics can be a problem. And if anybody's interested afterwards, I have a module I used to teach called The Good and Bad of Organizational Politics. I don't think I've subjected any of you to that. But politics can be a problem, or I want to say, or an opportunity. Because what are politics? Anybody want to give a definition of what are politics? We all know, that's when we do know when we see it. What are politics? Politics is the exercise of interpersonal and interorganizational power. Okay, so what we're really talking about here, and I'm glad it's kind of found its way out, is authenticity, especially if it has to do with safe spaces, vulnerability, is kind of keeping your power in check, but knowing that you could exert power. So I want you to do your best job and I won't fire you if you fail the first time, you know, but there is still this idea that if there's a formal leadership position, there might still be an exercise of power. So this is where trust comes in, knowing when you've made your best effort, you could have a contract for failures. Anybody ever had a contract for failure? Is that something anybody's familiar with? Contract for failure is a formal document that you fill out between your team or between your boss or between your colleagues. And it says, I will try my best, but if I try my best and we still can't achieve our goals, we'll still be cool. And it's whatever words you want for that, you'll still get. It could be a contract for a software development of something that's really technologically uncertain. I will try my best, but if I can't meet this deadline, I still get paid. That's a contract for failure. A contract for failure in a startup could be, we're all going to do our very, very best, but if this thing doesn't take off in 6 months, everyone gets their initial money back, or we split the money we have 5 ways and part as friends. Contracts for failure anticipate that even in the best situation, bad things can happen. And I'm betting a lot of people wish they had these contracts right now with COVID, because it's, you know, it's a out of control, totally unexpected black swan kind of thing to many people.
Can I quickly interject?
Of course, that's what we're here for.
I guess one thing I was thinking of in relation to your politics is thinking about reward systems. And I think that a lot of times reward systems can motivate or demotivate. And so you could be an environment where, you know, you want to be your authentic self, but your leader does not practice that or role model that. And you're seeing that rewards are going to those who do not also reflect that behavior. So I could see that definitely coming into play.
That's really well said. So I don't know if I'm doing justice to your words here as I type, but reward systems can motivate or demotivate, and then peer behavior can signal what is and isn't desired. So I was a consultant for many years, and a lot of the mentality, especially early days that I grew up in and I learned my trade, were you were tough, you didn't show emotion, you didn't share family matters, you know, you were there for the work. Highly professional, very impersonal. And there was a person who joined our team from Silicon Valley, and she would write emails that said things like, I'm so happy that it's Monday, and I'm so glad we have a new client to serve. And especially in email, and this again, you know, I've been around for a while, so email wasn't my native language. And so you get this Pollyanna, I'm so glad, and this is so great. And most of us who had been there for a while reacted like, what's her play? What's she getting at? How is she gonna hurt us? And it took a really long time before we're like, nope, she really is just happy it's Monday and she has a new client to serve. That's her. But yeah, I remember laughing out loud with some of her sort of like, so glad we're all collaborating on this. And I'm thinking, okay, who's not on the email chain? But even being self-aware at that level, where are you skeptical? Where have you kind of learned behavior that is, I don't trust, I trust, but I verify. I don't even verify, I just don't trust.
A question. First of all, that was a good comment. So thank you for sharing, contributing to my comments. But how often in the professional workplace, well, I guess in like, let's say Fortune 1000 company, if we're looking at that segment of professional workplace, how often do you see contracts for failure? Are they a commonplace? Are they I'm just curious if you could speak to that a little bit more.
I see them a fair amount because they are more common in corporate entrepreneurship. So if you're a big company, you're asking somebody who has a good job already in a company. So let's say let's just stick with Ford Motor, and I'm asking someone who's very established, very senior, has a good income, their kids are in private school, they live in Grosse Pointe, they're happy as can be. I'm asking them to do some new venture driverless car thing and partner up with some tech company and smart cities and. So for corporate venturing, a lot of times those kinds of contracts are in place so that the person can either go back to where they were, which was a nice stable job, or live to fight another day. Because otherwise none of those really good people would ever leave those great secure jobs to go do anything innovative. They just say, nope, I'm happy selling my whatever $65,000 Ford pickup trucks. So that's where I see them a lot, and I do work in corporate entrepreneurship a lot, but I don't think they're a standard procedure as much as they should be. Good question. Even General Electric, when they tried to start to be more high tech, they couldn't get anybody from GE to take high tech jobs. And so they went out to Silicon Valley and they tried to recruit some serial entrepreneurs. And everyone from Boston, well, Boston now, GE used to be in Connecticut. I will cry a small tear for that because I used to live in Connecticut, and when GE left, it decimated Connecticut. but now they're in Boston, helping the Boston economy. So, but they wanted to have new ventures in high tech, and none of the GE execs would take those jobs. So they went out to Silicon Valley and they were going to court these serial entrepreneurs, and everyone pretty much laughed at them and said, how in the world is General Electric going to hire serial entrepreneurs? Because aren't they all hoping to make $1 billion, and aren't they all crazy cowboys and that kind of thing? But they actually did have some success by creating, again, I love the idea of reward systems, the right kind of reward system. Would you rather be a startup guy or girl or person who takes 5 years to get a big bonanza, or would you rather get a steady paycheck from GE while you're taking crazy risk with a big possible upside and no downside? So, I don't want this to morph into just about being about incentives, but the point is people have to believe they will get what they're promised. They have to believe that it's also fair, that if I'm working side by side with Jennifer, that we both do the same work and she makes 5 times as much money as I do. That's a breach of authenticity. It's not just a breach of contract or trust. I'm going to do my little mini trust. Anybody else have any trust questions or any questions at all? 3 kinds of trust. I love talking about trust. Trust is my favorite. Okay, the 3 kinds of trust are competence trust. And competence trust means what I tell you I will do, I am capable of doing. If I say, Steve, I will do a Tough Mudder with you, and every time I have to carry you for 100 yards, I will carry you for 100 yards. Okay, I might mean that, but I am incompetent to do that. So if I can't do it, if I say to Mira, I will tutor you and you'll get better grades, I might mean it, but I might not be able to produce. Okay, so competence trust, whether it's at home, in your community, in your organization, on your team, it's fundamentally, can you do what you're promising to do? So sometimes that's where we fall down, and that's the place where contracts for failure help the most, because I tried my best, I just couldn't do it. And you can repair that, because you can say, oh, you couldn't do it, but we can repair that. Most trust, if it's broken, cannot be repaired, or is very hard to repair. Contract trust is, does anybody know what contract trust is? Contract trust, I'll give you a, contract trust is literally what lawyers work on. That, we signed a deal that said, you take possession of my house in 30 days, you take possession of my house in 30 days. So contract trust is, do we understand what we agreed to, and are we both, or all the parties, if it's a contract or a trust relationship that's multidimensional with more than 2 people or 2 groups, is just saying, we're in a strategic alliance, or we're creating a new product together. Whatever it is we're trying to do is transparent. It's there's a fundamental honesty, but it is whatever I contracted to, I will fulfill that contract, even if it might cost me money. Maybe I agreed to buy oil from you at $20, and now I could buy it for 0, as far as I hear. But I'm going to honor my contract. Okay, those 2 kinds of trust, again, are about can you and will you. Goodwill trust is really the kind of trust most of us mean when we start to talk about authenticity. So when we started this dialogue about how authenticity enhances strategic leadership and it helps build trust, it builds goodwill trust. Goodwill trust is the kind of trust where I will make myself vulnerable for you. I will go out of my way to help you have a better outcome. This is the kind of trust that we often imply, but if it's not fully transparent, when I'm saying I trust you, the other side might be hearing, okay, you won't void my contract. Okay, so I trust you goes beyond this. I trust you means I'm going to create a safe space where we can actually be honest with each other. We can even be vulnerable in terms of whether we have some self-doubt. And I'd love to circle back around to the couple of people who talked about that. Being able to say, I'm not sure if this is the right thing to do, but I'd like us to try. Or I'm trying to seem confident, but I'd like to have time to get a little more data to shore up my position. the kinds of self-doubt that can be assuaged by data analysis, by surveying other people, by experience are different than the kinds of self-doubt that are rooted in emotion. So there's a kind of self-doubt that is on the analytical side. I don't know if I have the answer yet. And there's a kind of self-doubt that's on the emotional side, which means I think this is right, but I'm afraid. Or I think this is right, but I'm experiencing another emotion, whether it's anxiety or fear or many other emotions. Does that make sense? I'm going to pause there and just see how that landed with you, because that was a lot of stuff about trust and emotion and vulnerability. Any examples of a leader who showed you goodwill? Any examples of a leader who didn't? And you don't have to name names.
I was thinking of the whole goodwill part and like allowing people room to fail. It's kind of a silly example, but I had a guy doing some concrete work at my house, and he was telling me how he had this worker working for him, and they were pouring like this huge set of stairs, and the guy didn't build the forms correctly. And so like as they're almost done, the forms blew out and the entire set of stairs just like washes away, like all this concrete. And I mean, everybody's like super like panicking. And the guy who was building the forms, he like just gets up and starts walking away. And the owner of the company, he's like, "Where are you going?" He's like, "I know, I'm fired." He's like, "No, you're going to be my best form guy going forward." And like he flipped it back on him. He's like, "Yeah, like everyone's going to make a mistake, but you're never going to make that mistake again." And so I think it goes back to that goodwill where you have to allow people to make those mistakes, kind of like the Ford example. Like, I don't like, if we were running, if everything was green, that means we're not stretching ourselves enough. So like, let's dig in and start building this, but allowing the people to have that space to grow, I think that's what resonated with me as far as goodwill trust goes.
Nice. That is a great, I will remember that example for a long time. You'll never make that mistake again. But that, and so often, I think what that reveals also is in the 4 pillars of authentic leadership theory, it doesn't necessarily get into what is your philosophy of how do you think about people. And I think what that story, Steve, really reveals is you think about people as capable of growth. And that, I feel like, resonates really well with the strategic leadership principles of personal agility and growth. We got to believe we can be better tomorrow. Even if we're doing our best today, our best tomorrow or next week or next month or next year is going to be better. And that doesn't mean today we're failures. It just means we're on a growth trajectory. And sometimes you have to step back to step forward. Thanks for that story. Who else has something to share? Let's hear from some more people. Hopefully you're getting the idea this is a free-for-all, so jump right in.
So this is Anastasia. I also have a quick example. So our VP of a company where I work, we have a weekly phone calls where anyone can ask any question about anything. And obviously people are asking questions about the situation, when we are going to get back to work, and like physically, and also questions about obviously, because like a lot of industries are impacted, how it's gonna play out in the long term, including questions about layoffs and things like that. And so there are a couple of things what I really I thought that was a really good example. that VP of our of our division, he basically says the way it is. He says, as of right now, that's the measures. What will happen next, I don't really know. And so he's very open about it. He's not trying to come up with any type of sugarcoating, saying, hey, it's all going to be okay, everyone will have a job or something like that. He says the way it is, that he doesn't really know what is going to happen. So I truly appreciate his honesty and saying what he knows and saying what he doesn't know. So that was one of the examples. And another example that I think that a lot of companies right now face some type of salaries cuts and things like that. So, and obviously our company is not an exclusion and did some type of furloughs or salary cuts. But at the same time, the way they did it saying that we are all in it together. So it is not that people are just like manufacturing people, for example, are just laid off, but actually the salary cut was like for various executives, and the higher level executives had the higher cut in salary for like certain period of time. So it wasn't just, hey, we will lay off these like manufacturing people or this division just because we do not have sales as of right now, but we do expect the sales picking up after the situation. So it was done that we are all in it together. It wasn't us versus you, but we did it together as a company to survive as a company and to have everyone employed the way we are.
Great example. And I think so many people this is another example of, we know it when we don't see it, but that trying not to sugarcoat things, we're all in it together. These are they can be a mantra where you can feel like it's just words, but from your story, you can tell there is an authenticity there. There is a sincerity. So nice. Who else has a story to share or questions? You can ask the group a question. You can just kind of ponder how this is landing with you.
You know, one thing that's coming to my mind, this is Juliana, is how much I try to search for authentic leadership in the interview process. So I've gotten really frustrated by asking questions like, tell me your management style or tell me your leadership style, because I felt like I kept getting these really bland answers or whatever, like insert new top hot thing, you know, in the business book section was coming out. And so I started changing my questions to get at a little more like nuanced, subtler, but truly authentic responses. So I would start asking, you know, tell me the last time your office went through a strategic change. How did that happen? How was it implemented? Upon reflection, what would you change? I would ask, you know, what was the last time you changed your mind on something? How did that process happen? What changed your mind? In what way was that person trying to communicate change to you? Like, I guess I was just really trying to hit on some of these when I'm looking at these pillars and these principles, because I was getting frustrated by like these really bland responses in these interviews that I know that that's not something that I'm looking for. And so I don't know if other people have had that experience, if they've kind of, you know, because you're just as much interviewing them as they are interviewing you. And so some of it is trying to get at the organizational culture and asking something like, tell me about your organizational culture. You're going to get some pretty great responses. You're going to get some pretty bland or, you know, responses that I don't think actually help.
Right on. Well, and Juliana, you haven't probably heard this, but many of the others have, but my go-to description of what is an interview is a conversation between two liars.
I love it.
Yeah, I
so
heard
true
that
though. So true, right?
I heard that from a headhunter, and it stayed with me. But yeah, but that is a great way. So how do you draw out authenticity in others? And I love your use case of the interview process, because that's so important to bring the right kind of people into your team. But you can use it throughout, I would think, to try to encourage other people to share, encourage other people to be authentic, and to avoid that bland, superficial kind of safe response. So in the chat, Ruchi, do you mind if I play your chat? Interviews are like dating. Thank you, exactly right. And I say that as a single person. So, all right, so we were trying to get at this one question. We were trying to get at this one question about authenticity and how it may enhance strategic leadership. I want to push this on a little bit, just looking at the time. If you're not talking, just mute yourself because I think we have a little background noise. Can someone who is inauthentic be an effective strategic leader? So think of someone who is relentlessly pursuing value. They're very clear in their vision. Okay, and so to me, I'll start us off, but what comes to mind for me is someone who says, we're going to buy distressed properties. We're going to create tons of value. I'm very self-aware. I am a predatory kind of play offense when the rest of the world is on defense kind of person. I'm continually growing in my understanding of how to leverage my debt position. I want to find people who are in a disadvantaged position, buy up their assets and resell them to create huge value. I can navigate the unknown. I can enable other people's success on my team. Is this effective strategic leadership? Because I just ticked off all the 6 principles, but I want to know your reaction to sort of, I might not be authentic in terms of creating a safe space or tolerating failure or giving people a second chance or what were some of our other pillars up here? Or, setting clear expectations or doing the right thing. So what's our thinking on this? And, you don't even have, you can pick a position here, even if it isn't really your own position. What do you think? How can we think about this?
I kind of wonder if you could be an effective strategic leader without being authentic, but you wouldn't last long, I don't think, because something would kind of fall apart. Maybe you'd be able to get like 1 or 2 projects done, but then something would happen and then you would lose a lot of the help, because from my understanding, you need a team to get some of this stuff done. Most of it you can't do it all by yourself, and so if you are found out that if you're inauthentic, then you're not going to be able to get people's trust after that. I mean, even if you have to have like you said, the competence or the contractual trust, you lose the goodwill, and then you can't replace that very well.
All right, very, very nice. I mean, that's a really interesting way to hypothesize that fool me once, shame on me, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, but same kind of thing. If I'm going to stay working for or with this kind of a person who can't be trusted and who first chance they get, they're going to throw me under the bus as a, undervalued asset or something. All right, but that's very plausible. And so it could be this is a temporary advantage, but it's not a long-term sustainable career-long successful person.
Yeah, that makes me think that in the short term, power and coercion and maybe competitive measures might pay off, but in the long term, they do not.
Okay, and we had a couple other things too. Thank you, Juliana. I'm putting that's a and what did you say after that? Power and conversion and
competition.
Competition. Okay.
Like short-term gain, but probably not long-term gain.
Yeah, for those of you who think about game theory, it's fascinating. Okay.
I think can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. What this conversation is making me think about is leadership in, for example, higher education. That's the main industry that I've been involved with, and there is a lot of hierarchy within higher education, and I've seen some leaders, like VP level and above. Really good ones with a really good strategy and a vision, but then some other ones that have been in that position for years just because of politics. But whoever is right below those people are the ones that are holding everything together. They are the ones with the strategy. They are the ones with the vision, even though the main leader does not have it, you know? And it's very frustrating at times because I'm thinking, you know, the person below that person should be the person running the show, and it's not possible because of politics. So yeah, it's hard.
Okay, and that's a really good one. The figurehead and then the person who actually knows what's happening. And oftentimes you get that in blended organizations too, where there's someone who's a political appointee and then there's someone who's a career diplomat. So if you're looking at politics and not just hierarchy in private organizations, but even something, so for example, the Rotary Club, if any of you know the Rotary Club structure, the president of the Rotary Club is a 3-year term and they roll over. But the director of the Rotary Club stays on for 15 years. So that director knows what's going on. The president is more the figurehead that rolls over and rolls over. But if you don't understand this, so let's call one of them Anne and one of them Mary. So Anne is the one who's rotating out in 3 years, and they have a political agenda, and they really are just there to hold the symbolism together almost. But the Mary is day to day doing the job, making sure that the clubs and the dues and the organization and the HR and the compliance policies and everything else is happening. So understanding it's not really Anne's fault that they're not transparent. That's not what they're there for. But I think there's some really interesting things about whether it's structural or whether it's not, and whether it's necessary or not. It's really interesting. EP, you had something else earlier too, and we cut you off, I think. Or was that too long ago?
I have a question. This is Anastasia.
Sure.
So I'm just like, this question, can someone who is unauthentic be an effective strategic leader? So this is a very good question. I was thinking, what about like different cultures, for example, somewhere in China or somewhere, I would say Japan probably is a little different, just because I worked with some of people from those different regions, and it seems that obviously there are cultural differences which impact that. But what I was thinking about, if it is somewhere like even China, how does it play out in the long term when a leader is not authentic? And I understand that with internet and globalization, we talk more and more about authenticity and the importance of it as a part of strategic leadership. But still, the question is, how is it somewhere like China or somewhere other like more countries where there is like bigger social aspect?
That's a really great question. I don't think I don't have enough context to answer it, to be honest. I've certainly seen different definitions of transparency, trust, authenticity in Scandinavia versus South America, different places I've worked and been. But does anybody have the context to think about what would it mean in a communist society, in a socialist society?
I mean, I lived in Sweden for a year, and I would say they had a flatter hierarchy. So that was something that I noticed immediately. But I think it just depends on different characteristics like power distance, cooperative versus independent, like collectivist thinking versus independent thinking. So I think there's a lot there. I don't feel like I can answer it at all, but that's one example, just having lived in Sweden.
Yep. Well, yeah, and I think that maybe that's something we can catch on to on a future slam. What transparency means, what authenticity means, and authenticity, and what leadership means. Because if you're an egalitarian society and you're thinking more about the we than the me through your whole life, as I believe you do in China, and the extended family is different, it's not such a me culture, everything might be different. So let's revisit that at another point. Really great question.
Thank you.
This is Mira. I have a comment to it. I think at this point, what we can do, it goes back to that self-awareness and just being aware of this different, that you're working with these different cultures, like from like different teams or people from, so that probably you must be self-aware yourself, and understand that there is a cultural difference, and if somebody doesn't smile you back, it doesn't mean that person is not authentic or not nice. It just, you have to be aware that that there is a cultural difference. So because
Yeah.
other than that, this can become really controversial conversation.
Yeah,
So
I understand that part. I'm just curious how it is there. How do they look at it? So I'm just like, I'm interested in their perspective. So that's what it is. Yeah, I totally get like cultural differences and things like that. But it's just like fascinating to me to think somewhere like in, yeah, a country like China, because it's one of the biggest countries with like really fast growing economy.
Well,
How
then you
do
might
they
also
look at
have
it?
people on your own team who are coming from other cultures, who have other definitions. So just like I said, this person who came into my consulting culture and they seemed way too like happy all the time and rah rah. At first, we didn't respect them. You know, yay, it's Monday. We're thinking, what a moron. You know, and so to get legitimacy, to be able to get respect, you know, the idea of, you know, you pull your hair back and you're very businesslike and you say, okay, it's Monday, let's get to it. You know, that's a different, but if that's what the thing about authenticity is though, if that's who I really am, if I'm a Monday, let's get to it person and I try to be a cheerleader, that's inauthentic. If I'm the cheerleader and I try to be let's get to it, that's inauthentic. There's a great quote down in this article that, you know, hang on, it's not that one. Here, there are too many examples of how other people lead. There are no examples of what's authentic to you until you get there and you do it. So a lot of the self-awareness is not just how am I perceived by others. It's what did I just do and why did I just do it and how did it feel to me? How did it work? What did it feel like it landed with me and it was my core expression of who I really am? And that part is where you can be tremendously successful. We see so many leaders who have these, call it a midlife crisis just to be succinct, but they're doing what they think they're expected to be doing and they're doing great. They get the promotion, they get the big office, they get the company car, they get the overseas posting, they get whatever they want. But until they kind of get to the point where they say, you know, I know how to play the game now, but I'm playing the game as somebody else set the rules. At some point, when do you set your own rules? When do you create your own game? When do you decide how you want to keep score? And that, so a lot of people say authenticity can't be taught to young people. It has to be emergent over their careers, but there are many points of view on that. Go, Ruchi.
One of the things, just hearing you say that, one of the things that I'm reminded of is sometimes I think I'm actually being authentic to myself, but it won't be well received by the people in the organization. And so I do it, but then almost apologize for it or try to mask it. So because I think being true to my values, I want to be who, you know, it doesn't feel good to me to try to do things that are counter to my values. And I have a pretty strong belief, like in the Clifton strengths, if you were to look at that, you know, belief is one of my big ones. But then I find myself explaining it away to other people like, oh no, I'm not doing it because of this really core belief I have, because I think I'm afraid of being judged, because I don't think it's accepted in the organization so it's like maybe my actions are authentic, but I'm still a little afraid to let it be known as being authentic to me, if that makes sense.
It makes a huge amount of sense. And it makes me a little bit sad because ideally you'd bring your authentic self to every interview. You'd match with a company that fit you and you fit them, and you could just always just be yourself. But that almost never happens because you're trying to get a job, you're competing for a position, there's a different set of standards. And then even the people who interview you might not be the people you work with day to day. So there are so many, because authenticity is through the eyes of the beholder, it's so easy to be misconstrued, to be misunderstood, and then to get burned so that you step back away from your true self. And that's totally normal and rational. It's actually a good risk mitigating strategy, is to say, people don't like, all of me is kind of a lot, so I'm not going to bring it all. I'm going to just bring little bits. I'm going to test the water, test the market, and make sure I don't cross that line, especially if I feel like that line, there's no coming back. It's like the opposite of the story with the contractor. You will get fired, or you will never be respected again. So there is a resilience piece of being fearless, being able to get over self-doubt, being able to take appropriate risk, but it really comes back to safe space. So when this is going well, it's all a really happy talk. But when it's not going well, it can be soul destroying. I've seen people really have what's the opposite of an epiphany? Have a real problem with, they won't accept me for who I am. Then now what happens?
I actually have an experience related to that. About 10 years ago, I started my career in higher education, and I was really naive right out of college, and I was just begging for any job. I would accept anything, right? And I got into this position, and my boss was a terrible human being. She was terrible. And, a month in, I realized this, and I was like, what am I going to do? Quit after 1 month? And I really want to be in higher education? There's no way. So I was like, well, I'll give it maybe a year. I lasted 6 months, and I started looking for another job. And the main thing that I realized within those 6 months is that I needed a boss that would listen to my ideas. Even if they were crazy ideas, at least listen to me and explain to me, why is it not possible? Or give me the freedom to just do it, but give me the tools to do it, right? Or just tell me, have this a specific time to assign to these big ideas that you have. Mm-hmm. And so when I was looking for that transition, for that job, the next job, I remembered driving to the interview and thinking, I'm just going to be myself. I'm just going to be exactly how I am, because I'm not willing to be in a place for another 6 months where they're not willing to give me the freedom that I need. And so I remember telling in my interview this, and I said, well, this is how this is what I need. This is who I am. If you're willing to take me, great. If not, I'll go find some other place. And they took me, thankfully. And I was in that job for almost 5 years, and it was one of the best jobs I've ever had, because they gave me all the freedom in the world. I was able to experiment and grow so much. And I think I knew I was lucky in that position, but there was no growth as far as moving up in the ladder. There was no opportunity to grow, to be a manager or anything like that. So I had to move away from that job, and I'm in a position now that I have a lot of freedom, but not a lot of support. So it's such a weird balance of realizing what works for you, but also the environment that you need. That I think it will happen rarely when you find those two things at the same time.
Oh, so well said, Maria. I took a lot of notes when you were talking. And one of the things that really sticks out is it a trade-off? Is it a polarity? For those of you who work with me on polarity mapping, to trade off freedom for support, for being in a structured area versus being unstructured or able to be innovative. But one thing I really want to push on for tonight is also, we're talking about ourselves a bit, but how can we give others the freedom to be themselves? So is there somebody you're working with, whether it's a peer or a superior or someone who reports to you? How can you give someone else the freedom to say, bring your whole self to work, or let your freak flag fly, whatever it is? Like, can you be more open to someone else? And then when they do it, are you going to be like, JK, nope, didn't really want that? Because that is, I think I've told some of you, I worked with a fellow one time and he started working with me. And his introduction to me was, he wrote a page that said, "The Care and Feeding of Peter." And he said, "I work best when I get a lot of sleep. Sometimes when I've had a late night, I'll come in late. I need to be spoken to gently and given a lot of support and encouragement." I don't remember it exactly, but I laughed out loud. I mean, I was just sort of, is this person kidding me? Because I was, again, from this culture of, you just suck it up, do the work, don't complain. Thousands of people want your job. The minute you let your guard down, you're out. And this person's saying, and I also, if we order lunch, I'm gluten-free, and like, whatever. He had the whole thing down here. And we did not get along terribly well, because why didn't we get along? Because he was perfectly within his rights to say, here's what I like. Why didn't we get along? What do you think he could have done to make the relationship better?
Okay, can I also interject the gender discussion in this too? Because I think that after hearing Ruchi and Maria talk, I both times went back to women apologize and look for different things more often than men do. Like, my husband and I were just talking the other day about two similar scenarios, me and another female, and then he and another male, and they just kind of like let it all roll through, and I got really heated about things, and I looked at it from the gender lens, I guess, and kind of realized that my cognitive processing was probably skewed by my own gender, and then his also was on the other end. And then after like hearing, Ruchi say that feels that she has to explain away her authenticity, or Maria say she wasn't finding what she needed, then I can't help but see the like female side of that. And then you bringing back this male into the picture kind of brings it full circle, and saying like, that's what he wanted and that's how he acted, and that's just him, and he's a guy. So like, would a woman have done the same? I don't know. But
yeah, and my contention is, we would have got along fine if he would have said, "So Trish, give me your sheet of things that you need. Now let's have this be a two-way street. Let's find a way to meet in the middle, or let's agree to disagree." But it was absolutely it was like, okay, I will work for you if these are my conditions, almost like a demand sheet, like a hostage taker. So no, that's really great insight, EP. Other comments or pushback, reinforce?
Well, I was thinking, I jumped in late, but when you asked about authenticity versus seeing what you had written up above about authentic leadership, and that not exactly, in my mind, being the same thing, or how I would, and maybe you already, but how I would think about or define authenticity would be for me as an individual, I'm being authentic to who I am, or someone else is, but not necessarily creating that safe space or doing the other things that are listed under being an authentic leader. And how that's like, I can be true to myself, but not make someone else like that guy, right? Like Peter. That's who I am, but I'm not making you feel good. It also brings up just sort of equity and inclusion issues as a leader. If you think about it, it's much easier to say, oh, well, if you're like me, then great. Then we get along well. You be authentic, I can be authentic, and we're not going to annoy each other to death or piss each other off. Sorry, because our authentic selves get along with each other. It's when
Yeah, that's
my
a good.
authentic self and your authentic self kind of clash, then it gets harder. And I agree, EP, then sort of like societally as well, those pressures for, like, I think are just not as much there. They're sort of like, well, what, deal with it. And a woman's like, oh, harmony, and those aren't sort of terribly bad things, but it's just how we react when things are clashing. And so if you're in an organization where it's like, yeah, we're all about people that are just like us, and everyone feels good and maybe is able to rise, but it's only if you're sort of like us, versus an organization where it's like everyone can bring their individualistic freak flags and it can be very different but still be successful. I think that's different. And then going back to the interview question, like, how do you actually suss that out before you get to a place?
Not easy, that is for sure. Okay, I'm noticing that we're coming up on 8 o'clock, which I believe is when we're supposed to be breaking. If people want to stick around and contribute or share or keep talking, I will stay a while. I'll share back these notes that I made while we were talking. You should already have the article. And the question that we didn't quite get to is sharing examples of leaders who are or are not authentic and the impact it has on value creation. And a little bit, I think we did touch on this. If we can't be authentic in interviews, we won't represent ourselves appropriately and we might get in the wrong job. That doesn't create value. If we do share too much of our demands of, accept the full me without realizing that we're in an ecosystem, we're in a community, and our rights stop where other people's rights start, then we have to be more cautious about how much we can express given that we're in a professional setting. And the gender issues, wow, I think we should just have a slam about gender sometime. And bring in some guest speakers or something. But anybody want to close us off with any examples or just sort of even your own insights or what you're taking away from tonight? I could do a quick process check if people want to do that. Anybody want to talk? How about a process check then? Oh, go ahead. Who's on?
I was thinking about this leader in my time in higher education, who was one person, in front of one group of people, and that person was completely different in a different scenario with the other set of people. And I wish that person would have kept kind of like the same personality, right? Like the same authenticity at all levels, that would have given that person, sorry, I don't want to mention names or genders.
Just call them Peter. Just say it's Peter.
So I really wanted Peter to, I would have wanted him to see the power of just keeping the same agenda no matter the audience. And I feel like it's something that he didn't see at all. And there is power in that, in carrying the message no matter your audience. So I think about that a lot. Like being yourself no matter who you're talking to.
That is really powerful. And I think that the idea of being that chameleon, we almost want to be that. Like I can be this way with the sales guys and this way with the R&D people. I can talk to the coders and then I can talk to the venture capitalists. But if it is carrying the same message, that's a really important nuance that you're drawing out is, am I changing myself in those situations, or am I just modifying the message? Am I translating it, or is it a whole different message? That's really good, Maria. All right, any other closing comments? Most of you know what a process check is. It's one of my favorite things. So if you don't know, you each get a chance to say one word about how you're feeling right now. You could say tired, you could say exhilarated, you could say anything you want to. It's judgment-free. And this is a technique that I like to share because I learned it from someone else. And it's just a great way to know what's in the little thought bubble above people's heads, that you can then decide to unpack one-on-one, or you can come back. But I learned it in a meeting where the meeting was going really badly and we didn't know why people were not participating. And when we did a process check, we found out which people were confused and which people were annoyed and which people were just tired. Okay, so hopefully we don't have too much confused, annoyed, and tired, but whatever your word is, let's go around. Let me start with you, Ruchi.
Intrigued.
Intrigued. Steve, how about you?
Motivated.
Motivated. Juliana.
Curious?
Curious. Maria.
I'm just excited to be here. I love this meetings, Zoom calls, whatever we call it.
Good. Well, it's good. You're now a real slammer, so thanks for coming. Okay, Erin.
I also am with Ruchi, and intrigued was the first word that came to my mind.
Thank you. EP.
I think that, I don't know, I'm feeling reassured.
Okay. Thank you. Reassured. And you can always say pass too. Mira.
I keep thinking about different. Yeah, different.
Different. Cool.
Different.
Atilia. Atilia.
I feel hopeful.
Hopeful. Thank you. Anastasia.
I feel inspired.
Inspired. Jennifer.
Also motivated.
Motivated. Kevin.
My energized.
Energized. Gina.
I think validated.
Validated. Thank you. Toma.
Mine is probably interested, and I also like validated too.
Thank you. And Zach.
Reflective. In other words, I'm reflecting on what I've heard.
Right. Great. Well, thank you all for coming, for being so open to share, for making this, I think, a learning experience for me for certain. I'd say my word is informed, because I come in from the academic perspective, and bringing it to life is always informative. And grateful. I'm always grateful for you spending your time this way to improve yourselves and to help us all improve the way we lead others and the way we lead ourselves. So before I get too mushy, because that's not my authentic self, I'm going to say good night, goodbye. Please come back next month. And if you have ideas for slams, if you want to invite other people, if you want to have the center do other kinds of activities, make sure you let EP and Erin know, and stay in touch. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You all. It's great.
Thank you very much.
Trish, I do have one quick question, if that's okay.
I'm still here, yeah.
I was just really surprised not to see some aspect of emotional intelligence listed in any of the pillars or principles. Is that on purpose for any reason, or I don't know? I'm just curious.
I think it's actually quite interesting. I think if we broke down from the pillars and we went to the skill set, we definitely come right up against it in some of the dimensions of emotional intelligence. But that's a nice call out. And if we dug more into what authentic leadership theory really is, what are the necessary skills and behaviors and mindsets, then I think it would come out loud and clear.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you.
No, great question.
Hey, Trish, this is Zach. I have a question.
Sure, go ahead, Zach.
It's more about
you guys know me. If you keep talking, I'll stay on.
I have a question about the executive education courses themselves. I know that in May there was mastering strategic thinking or strategic leadership. Is that course still happening, or is the use still kind of on hold, or is there talk of offering any of these executive education classes virtually, or?
We're in the middle of those discussions. It's a great question. I think there are 10 or 12 people signed up for that one, Mastering Strategic Leadership, as a 3-day in-person offering. And so the discussions right now are about, will it break into being, 5 or 6 little 2-hour Zoom meetings? I just did last week 2 full days of exec ed from 8 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon, with an hour lunch break and some other breaks. and we're waiting to get the feedback from people. But the part of it could come from demand. So if it would interest you to do an online version, maybe we'll have a shorter version or more interactive, or we'll do some videos that we'd send you. But we haven't given up yet. We definitely want to try to provide the experience in some format.
That's great. That's great to hear. Yeah, I'm not signed up for it or registered for it because I had a conflict, but now many of the conflicts I had travel wise are no longer conflicts. So I was interested again in that particular course. So
yeah, well, reach out if you have your exec ed contact. It's probably Mike Gifford or one of those people. Otherwise, reach out to us and we'll put you in contact, and then at least you'll get the updates as to what gets decided.
okay, that'd be great. Yeah, my contact is Darren.
Oh, Darren.
I think I reached out to him several weeks ago, but he didn't reply. So I'll reach back out to him again.
Okay, yeah, then he might have had nothing to say, so he wasn't sure. Because as I said, we're still, and I mean the faculty. So the faculty are trying to decide, do we have time to do a good job? Can we change it and convert it to a meaningful experience? And so the exec ed folks are also trying to gauge the market. So it's interesting times.
You bet. You bet. Thanks so much. That's helpful.
All right, well, I hope I see you again soon, Zach. Thank you. All right, other questions, comments? Nothing for now? All right, good. Well, go forth and lead, and stay in touch. Bye.
Bye.